A 24-year-old lies crumpled on the floor of a city bus. He was murdered, beaten to death by teenagers. A home in Dollar des Ormeaux. Bodies of a woman and her son lie on the kitchen floor. The boy murdered his mother, then took his own life. 3 adolescents hold up a Saint-Henri corner store. One of them, a 16-year-old, lifts a rifle to the man's head and, without warning, ends the man's life in a split second. When they're caught, teenage murderers are treated differently in Canadian courts than adults who murder.
There's a special section of the Canadian Criminal Code which spells out the court's responsibility to juveniles. It's called the Young Offenders Act. It recognizes the fact that minors commit all of the same crimes as adults, but under Canadian law, young offenders are dealt with differently than adults.
In juvenile court, a judge is obliged to consider more than protection of society.
The law says protection of society and also the needs of the young person that's before him at the time.
Right.
So from there, you've got to come up with something that will serve both grounds.
So then the law regards a young person as being more rehabilitatable than an adult?
Yes, and I think it's normal.
In exceptional cases, a minor may be tried in adult court. That was the case with Martin Labelle, who was charged in the shotgun slayings of his parents and older brother 2 years ago. He was only 14 years old at the time. Judges may transfer juveniles to adult court depending on the type of crime, whether the accused has prior convictions, the chances of rehabilitation, and whether penalties under the Young Offenders Law proved insufficient for past offenses. But, as in the case of the 16-year-old who murdered the corner store owner, judges tend to resist transfers to adult courts.
You'd have to be in front of a youth or confronted to someone who has been in the system before, for who different solutions have been tried at this level and have failed. Or else you'd have to be confronted to someone who has obvious needs that would exceed the maximum period of detention and treatment that's provided for under the Young Offenders Act.
The Young Offenders Act prevents us from identifying minors facing criminal charges, and under this law, punishment is less severe.
When an adult is convicted of first-degree murder, judges are obliged to impose a minimum sentence of life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. But there is no minimum for young murderers, and the maximum is 5 years.
Fear of violence prompted the federal justice minister to table proposals to toughen the Young Offenders Act, double the penalty for first-degree murder to 10 years, and make transfer to adult court automatic for 16 and 17-year-olds charged with crimes of violence, unless they can prove the public can be protected and they can be rehabilitated under the youth court system.
Adolescents that murder, they get a lot of attention, media attention, and it looks bad, and it is bad. So something quite clearly has to be done about that.
People who treat young murderers say longer prison terms would be a mistake.
Time doesn't change people. To do time doesn't change anybody. What changes somebody is being forced, I would say, in a way to change. Being put in an environment who won't let you at peace if you don't try to do something. But if you have the peace, you have your canteen, you're doing your time, when you get out, you're the same guy. Same guy who thinks he has learned maybe some ways not to get caught. Next time.
Sending them to adult courts, sending them for incarceration in the federal penitentiary, you're losing money, because when they come out, they won't be better citizens.
The public outcry for tougher laws to deal with young offenders comes, in part, from media coverage. We show you the crime scenes, sometimes we carry interviews with families of the victims, but we don't devote time to showing you what happens with teenage murderers.
Most of them will accept to talk to you easily. They're not difficult youngsters. They are not more difficult than adolescents that I see for less violent crimes.
They all have explanations, and I don't mean excuses. When I say explanation, I mean that when you go with them through their life and you try to understand every decision they took in their life, you know, starting sometimes from age 5, 6, they often have lived in difficult families, I want to say difficult families because I don't want to say that they were all violent families.
Tomorrow, we'll take you inside the Pinel Psychiatric Hospital to find out what can be done for teenagers who murder. Howard Schwartz, Pulse News.